It's time to call to order the June 21st regularly scheduled school committee meeting. This, if anyone is audio or video recording, please let us know. There's nobody here in attendance. Nobody on the screen is audio or video recording. I will rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Right, and we'll do a roll call. Heather, do you mind starting us tonight?
Oh, yes, sorry. Heather Brown, Director of Curriculum.
Pamela Blair, Assistant Superintendent for Business.
Elizabeth Marcy Boucher.
Bill Fonseca.
Sarah Trulio.
Gordon Smith, Superintendent of Schools.
Antonella Rochella.
Gregory Thompson.
Kathy Saletti, Recording Secretary.
And Samantha, do you mind introducing yourself too?
Yep, Samantha Velasquez. I'll be taking over for Kathy when she retires.
Excellent. Well, thank you for being with us tonight. We appreciate it. All right. That we will go to minutes. For approval.
Move to approve the June 6, 2020 executive session meeting minutes.
That's a nice.
Motion made by Bill,
I'll second. Sorry.
second by Beth. And this was the one I believe that
Yeah.
All right. Any further discussion? All right. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, and that motion carries 5-0. And then we have regular session meeting minutes on the 6th.
I move to approve the June 6, 2022 regular session meeting minutes.
Motion made by Antonella.
Second.
Second by Greg. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Opposed, nay. And that motion carries 5-0. And then we have the June 8th executive session meeting.
Move to approve the June 8th, 2022 executive session meeting minutes.
Motion made by Greg.
A second.
Second by Beth. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. And
I'm going to abstain.
And I'm going to abstain. So that motion carries 3-0 with 2 abstentions. All right.
Jump in.
Yes, you
for
may.
the next agenda.
I
item.
jumped real fast. See?
You did jump really fast. We did want to just present you something, Mrs. Trulio, for all of your incredible hard work as you chaired this committee and gotten us through another very challenging year. So this is presented to Sarah Trulio, Chair, EL School Committee, June 21st, 2022.
Very nice of you. It's my pleasure.
That's right.
It was
Put
good
my
work, not
fingerprints
hard
there.
work. Thank you. Good work is not hard work. So thank you, everybody. It was a team
Thank
effort.
you.
That is for sure. We work as a team. So thank you. Thank you for that recognition. All right. So committee and subcommittee reports. Greg, you want to start?
I'd love to start. I have nothing this evening. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Antonella?
eLeaf is having their bartender, celebrity bartender event tonight at Torritos. I think
Correct,
it's
yeah.
called. Yeah. So if anyone would like to go, it's from 5 to 10 tonight.
I was able to participate in field day at Bypoc, which was a really nice event to see the students being able to come back out and celebrate at the end of the year. It's great to see some of the old events come back out, the whales and the obstacle course. So it was really great. Tons and tons and tons of family volunteers, which was such a tremendous sight to see. Literally the line wrapped almost the entire parking lot. So it was great to see so many families coming out in support of our students. And I was also able to get over to Mountain View to see some of their end of year celebrations, including the 5th grade
Step up.
step up yearbook signings, shirt signing. Again, PTOs at that school did a wonderful job of really supporting the 5th graders as they transitioned to Birchland. So wonderful to see all the parent volunteers also at Mountain View, and just wishing everybody a great summer and looking forward to seeing the data this evening.
Staff recognition a couple weeks ago. Congratulations to all the recipients. So very well attended event as usual. Great job by all those, including Ilio, who presided for his last time.
Just want to mention that last week we had our first kind of it was a public get together to discuss where we are with the building committee. And I know probably a little updates, but I think that was okay attended in terms of online, but
We had 46, I believe, online, 46 or 47, and we had roughly 30, 35 in person.
which was good, but I'm hoping that we see more because it's really important for us to show that we're invested in this. So.
Thank you, Beth.
Yep.
Right, so there are no visitors currently in person here. But if there's anybody who is watching online that would like to speak, please raise your hand. Does not look as if there is, so we will move forward to our end of year presentation, which I know we have the leadership team in the virtual audience.
We
Don
do,
will work to get them in. And Heather,
and we'll, Ms. Brown's going to put up on the screen our slides. And then we will get going.
little door.
Yeah.
Evening, everyone. Few more to come in.
Thank you.
I'm not forgetting you.
Okay. I think we have everybody. You may get a few other folks, Mr. Mackey, that pop in. We did have some different commitments that may stagger people arriving. So just if you don't mind looking for that, I appreciate it. Welcome, everybody. Good to see you all.
Thanks for being
Hopefully you
here.
can see us. So this is our end of the year presentation. It's a combination. This year we had been able to separate, have a pre-meeting for data, and then bring the schools in to connect with how is that being, the different things implemented in the schools, different programs that are producing these type of results, which has worked well. And now we're at the end of the year, final meeting in June, and we're putting it all together as one team. And Mrs. Trulio just said it actually as we recognized it, or recognized her as chair. This is a team effort. It's this group that's on screen who are exceptional. It's the group in this room who are tremendous. There's no way we could achieve what I think you're going to see tonight, or I know you're going to see tonight, but engage with tonight without everybody's effort. Pulling and moving forward. As we all know, in August, we all had a different mindset as we were approaching sort of the final 2 to 3 weeks. But in those final 2 weeks, everything changed. And we went back to COVID protocols and different challenges that we saw the year before. So I can't say enough about the group here, group in the room, and our staff as a whole. So we're excited to present to you tonight. With that, we'll kick it off. Simply put, our mission is to make sure our students, as they go through, hopefully they come pre-K to 12, but K to 12, are ready to meet the challenges of tomorrow. They have the skills that needed to meet the challenges of tomorrow. And you've heard our theory of action, basically working together, which is what I talked about at the beginning, will help us then prepare students who have those 21st century skills to help them be successful. Taking a little bit more time, our SMART goal around supporting the whole child, really all our goals are interconnected, but this is where all of the things that we do come together because it's integrating the academic, the social, and the emotional. And we're continuing to improve on how we do that and how we integrate that. But we know we have strides that we need to continue to make. And I think we'll do so. And you'll see as you look at those end of the year benchmarks when we go through this, that we hit a number of these, if not hitting at the level or exceeding it. And we did get something at the end of the year, which probably will have further update, that the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education is looking into accountability and possibly making this year more of a benchmark year and not a year where you're putting into place the accountability measures that they had in years past. And that's where absenteeism would come into play, because that's the one benchmark on this page anyway that deals with the accountability system. So with that, we will move into our slideshow.
So for our spring survey, we combined the well-being with the climate, just because of the crunch time of the end of the year. And just want to remind everyone that Panorama shows all the data in terms of favorable. So if it says challenging feelings and it says 63%, that means 63% did not have challenging feelings. So everything's always in a positive frame.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. So with our K-2 reporting, remember, this is our staff reporting. And it's interesting because if you remember, we presented similar survey results in March. And then in March, we also were taking the masks off and removing a lot of the elements that had sort of restricted some of the things we did in the classroom. And you take a look and it's interesting. Yes, we have similar numbers or down a couple points in terms of emotion regulation and social awareness, but classroom efforts, engagement and social perspective taking all went up, including self-management, which is impressive given that that's the time frame, roughly March through June, 3 months, where we were really taking off those restrictions for the first time. And this is pre-K-2 or K-2 in terms of the response here by staff. That was nice to see. Then you take a look at our 3 through 5. Now, these are student responses. And we were excited to see supportive relationships continues not only to be strong, but go up and is sitting right around that 99th percentile. Our climate questions were asked for the first time. What we hope to do is have a separate survey, but just as Ms. Brown, we can put the two together and shorten the survey to allow students to get through it faster with some of the other end of the year activities. So our climate, 84% in terms of positive school climate, we were happy to see. Obviously, we want to see that continue to grow. School safety response, 82%, given some of the things that have happened this spring. Obviously, we want to see that grow too. Positive feelings, and this was something that Ms. Brown was just mentioning. So 72% are experiencing positive feelings, which is great, but it's not where, supportive relationships is. So that's something we want to work on and start to dig in a little bit more. And I think that's where we're going to start to see, and this is something that I was talking about as we looked at that whole child goal, that's where we have to start to really integrate with our counselors, how we're all doing this work together. Academic and social emotional connected as much as possible, even in our academic content areas, just in how you lesson plan, how you set up activities, you build those social skills. Challenging feelings, 68%. So remember, that's positive. People not feeling challenging feelings in terms of the 68%. Then as you flip and you go 6 through 12, we added some diversity questions here in terms of how students were seeing our work with diversity and inclusion, how they're seeing cultural awareness across the district, at least 6 through 12. And we saw some really good positive responses in terms of students feeling about how we're doing things. 89% feeling that diversity and inclusion is something that we're doing well. We're continuing to educate and work on that. And so hopefully that's something that continues to go up. Supportive relationships here, again, high. It's about the same as it was when we saw it in March, but 88% exceeding what we originally had hoped for in our benchmark goals. School safety, roughly the same as 3 through 5. Cultural awareness, which is a question for the first time that they saw, 81%. School climate, 81%, right around where we saw grades 3 through 5. and then positive feelings and challenging feelings going up a little bit for 6 through 12, but similar percentages that we saw in 3 through 5. So that's an area where we need to continue to work and start to probably work with classes, individual classes and individuals to figure out exactly what's going on there and how we can do a better job to support. We also looked at how our staff was feeling at the end of the year, and this was a long year. So many of you know, yes, it was 180 days with students, but it felt like it was much longer than that, not because of the students, but just because of the prep that we were going through, expectations that changed and so forth. And so we were happy to see similarly that our staff was feeling in a positive way, even at the end of the year. One, that they feel like they belong in their schools. That was good to see. Roughly 92% either felt they belong somewhat to all the way to completely belonging, that, they're there, they're enthusiastic every day. Obviously, we'd love to see that as 99, 100%. So we need to continue to work at that. This was also something that we were excited about, because this is a big question that we ask students all the time. We hadn't in the past asked staff members. And so to see close to 96% of our staff feel like they do have someone in their building to whom they can go to resolve issues and challenges and provide guidance, that's huge. Again, I'd like to see that circle closed at 100%, but close to 96% right now, we're feeling pretty good about.
This slide, we wanted to look at how people perceive their opportunity to work with their colleagues and plan collaboratively. And so the numbers here show that more than 50% feel like they have time. Obviously, we would love to see this go up, and we're excited because the new 3 to 5 schedule will have one common planning time every week, but because the way the schedule is organized, they'll have the opportunity to plan with each other every day. So they will have a lot more time to meet and plan with each other. I think when we show you the student growth data, I think that's a big part of it, is being able to work together as a team.
Before you flip this around, just one thing that's interesting about this, you can see it's almost somewhat equally mixed around the circle. So we do know that our training, the little training we were able to put in place, had some impact, but certainly not enough. And so that's something that we need to continue, and it's something that we'll work with the leadership team on this summer, as well as we know that we're implementing 2 curricular materials in 2 areas. And so there's going to be time where we're really going to need that collaborative planning time. And so structuring that is going to be really important. And so hopefully this circle next year.
I forwarded it because this one is about the use, not the amount of time, but how it's used. So it's what you're talking about. Yes.
All right. I'll segue to you. Sorry.
This is attendance, because we just talked about it. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so this is, as I had mentioned earlier, these are our averages with COVID absences taken out. And there was a call in May with the commissioner where it was presented to the superintendents that they were looking at accountability, and they were looking at how they take chronic absenteeism out. And similar to many things around accountability, there are multiple steps. You have to seek federal permission. Then after you receive federal permission, you have to seek state permission. And so it was my understanding that they had the approval of the federal government. And so then they were seeking state permission to do some things with accountability this year, so that COVID absences in this one part of accountability are not penalizing schools, and use it more as sort of your baseline, if you will. So these are our averages with COVID taken out. And we'd obviously like to see these higher, because in years past, I think we've been somewhere around 96%, 97%. So this was a challenging year, even without the COVID absences. One of the things that I can't say beyond a shadow of a doubt is causing sort of that downturn of a percentage point or so. But it is something that we have to take into consideration, is that our message all year and probably going forward is, when in doubt, stay home. And so if we're telling people, even if they didn't have COVID, but they have the symptoms, to stay home, and then at the beginning part of the year, they're going to seek a PCR test, that's probably a 2-day process. So 2 days right there, they might not be on the chronic absence list, but they've lost 2 days.
I also wonder if how many people they test positive for COVID, but they're not necessarily going to let the world know that that's why their kids are out too.
Right.
You know,
Could be.
you know,
That stigma's never going to go away.
no, it's not.
So, I mean, we're aware of the attendance. We're working on that. And so it's something that we're going to continue to work through and improve upon. We also know we need to know where the state's going to take us.
Do they have a minimum on average they want us at?
Well, they did, but if we
Right.
keep COVID numbers, then we're well below,
Yeah.
or above
Okay.
that minimum. Which is why I went with the COVID less. So just to give you an idea in terms of that whole child, just some summary points. Our students at all grade levels are feeling supported and are feeling positive about their schools and their relationships. We had a swing of anywhere between, or a range of 88 to 92%, which is a slight increase from the winter. They feel like they belong, which is really great. And we're starting to really concentrate on the social emotional learning in classrooms with the teachers and the counselors, and having that be something that is not seen as separate. It's seen as connected. And so that's something that we need to continue. The vast majority of our staff feel like they belong in their schools, and that they have someone to whom they can go to resolve challenges. That's really important. And we need to build upon that. The leadership team and stakeholders, teachers, parents, and students, this year met 10 times with the Center for Leadership in Education and Equity. Saying that, is that right, Clea? Okay. Center for Leadership in Education and Equity. And as you know, we worked specifically on our hiring, our hiring processes. That would be recruitment, which really had not been a focal area before for ELPS, but now is becoming one. What we do during the posting, interviewing, and hiring process, and then what we do after. What is the mentoring? What is the support as you bring on new personnel? And how do we do that where we're looking for highly qualified individuals to come and build our team in ELPS, also with a lens, though, of diversifying and starting to look at how our staff matches more our student body. And our student body's been changing over time. And that's something that we need to be very mindful of. And so that work has been very productive. And this summer, the leadership team needs to now take that work and start to really put together the final structure of what all of that will look like. Just to give you some idea, that means starting to get out to, we have a list of all our area preparation programs, and we've even gone beyond our local area into Connecticut, into upstate New York, and how do we connect with maybe national groups that could help us with some of our recruitment, but going and speaking to classes, participating more in hiring fairs, and then in the processes itself, how do we work with our committees who are going to be hiring at the different buildings and at the district level? And how do we train folks to work through that process in a very professional and somewhat, we can, completely bias-free way? I don't know if you ever can have a human being be completely bias-free, but that's the goal. Those are things that you'll start to see in all of our search processes, and we're excited about that. You know, because they presented to you, Interlocking Connections not only evaluated, but they made recommendations around our preschool model. And we've embraced those recommendations, and we're moving forward really quickly. And I know it's going to be a work in progress over the next 2 years, but a lot of things are going to happen this summer that's really going to take shape and put together a preschool model that we think is going to be exceptional. That's been some incredible work that has been taken on now by Ms. Lodi, Ms. Shea, Dr. Welsh, Mr. Fredette, Ms. Brown, Claire, and I've had a little part to play, but that's been the sort of the lion's share of trying to move that recommendation forward and really make it happen this year for our students and staff. And so we're excited for that. So those are just some summary points off of the whole child goal. And we'll move into some of the school connections now. And I think our elementary school is ready to roll.
Good evening, everyone. I'm speaking on behalf of all 3 elementary schools for this goal. And much of the data that we presented to you at the mid-cycle presentation has remained the same, but we've continued our community circles or morning meetings in our classrooms. We've continued teaching the second step curriculum, and the caseloads of our counseling staff have not changed that much since the mid-cycle. What I'd like to highlight for you tonight is how we accomplished all of these action steps that we planned at the beginning of the year. So a few slides ago, you saw that in our latest panorama survey, 92% of elementary students feel positively about the supportive relationships they have, which of course makes us very happy because this was the focus of our energy this year by teaching second step, by engaging in the community circles, and by adding the 2 new adjustment counselors, to 1 each to Mountain View and Maple Shade. So over 100 students in each of the 3 schools received direct counseling support this year, and it couldn't have happened without the addition of the 2 new adjustment counselors. I was speaking with Norma Campbell, my guidance counselor, when I was preparing for this information. And I mentioned to her that I felt like we actually spoke to each other less during the school day than we had in the last 11 years that we've worked together. And it didn't make sense to me because we had added Nick Hutchinson to our staff. Norma explained to me that because there were so many kids that needed her attention this year, but because we had Nick on staff, she was able to dedicate longer periods of time to the students during the school day than she would have in the past when she was handling them all by herself. So rather than rushing them through maybe a meeting that would have taken her a couple of minutes or 5 minutes in previous years, she was now able to sit and spend 20 minutes, half hour with the kids who really needed to talk to her. In this brief video clip, this is Nick Hutchinson, our new guidance counselor at, adjustment counselor at Mountain View. And he's going to explain the success of the second step curriculum that we all taught this year in all 3 schools.
The audio is going to be okay.
Should be. Yep, sounds like it.
Counselor here at Mountain View School. This year, we were really fortunate to have access. I'm Nick Hutchinson, School Adjustment Counselor here at Mountain View School. This year, we were really fortunate to have access to the second step curriculum in all 3 elementary schools in the district. With this research-based program, we are able to provide the same SEL curriculum for all of our students in K-5. Especially with the pandemic winding down, we thought it was critical that social and emotional skills were taught to each and every student, not just those who are receiving counseling support. The content in the program included 4 units which covered growth mindset, emotion management, empathy and kindness, and problem solving. The content was actually really applicable and fun to teach. The teachers got involved as well. At the end of the 20 lessons, over 90% of the students surveyed at Mountain View reported feeling confident or very confident with the skills they learned from each unit. It was awesome to hear the kids all using the same language throughout the year, and great to observe them using strategies to better manage their emotions, resolve peer conflicts, and make meaningful relationships. The elementary schools are most grateful for these critical resources that we use to enhance the well-being of our young students, and we really look forward to continuing to provide this support next year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank you.
Santinello. I think next up we have our middle school.
Counselor here at Mountain View School.
First we'll hear again from Mr. Hudson.
Hi, everyone. We did a lot of work with this at the middle school this year. It was certainly a very challenging year in terms of just students had been through a lot and are going through a lot. And so there was just more support than ever needed for them to sort of work through all that they had going on and then be able to sit and listen and learn. So, we took a multi-pronged approach and we talked a lot about it at the mid-year, but I put our Birchland data there. We're very proud of diversity, inclusion, and supportive relationships up there in the high 80%. And we're very proud of having 5 of these 7 indicators above 80%. But our ABAR staff committee, our anti-bias, anti-racist staff committee continued to meet every month, did some great work, really drove the school forward. One of the most incredible moments of every year is the end of the year now. We've been doing the Bypoc student focus group. This is a bunch of 8th grade Bypoc students where we sit down with a group of staff members and the students, and they really tell us the real deal of where they felt supported and where they didn't at Birchland Park. Moving forward, we're going to turn that into probably a bi-monthly meeting, because we're realizing now we're sort of getting a snapshot when they leave. And the information's incredible. Some of it's hard to hear. Some of it's wonderful to hear. But we're going to make that more cyclical so it can drive us during the school year. Obviously, our Pride Club, we've talked about our Diversity Club. We really tried to open up more avenues for students to feel supported in the school during the school year and during their day. We continued our social emotional lessons and our SEL Wednesdays. Those touched on everything from microaggressions to online safety to gratitude. And we really tried to do a diverse set of lessons there. We were really excited at the end of the year. We had an incredible last 2 weeks of school, and that was on purpose. We had a 6th and 7th grade dance. That was the most highly attended dance we've ever had. We had over 300 students come to that from 2 grades. It was an absolute blast. Our 8th grade semi-formal was great. Every grade level did different field trips, including Springfield College Outward Bound program, Shaker Bowl, High Meadows. So I wrote there just fun returns, which I think was really important. We were, this was an up and down school year for so many kids. We wanted the last month to feel like not as normal as possible. We wanted it to feel normal. And therefore, we offered all sorts of field trips and activities, which went very well. River Valley collaboration continues to be very important. I'm in the school today, and there's River Valley still coming in and meeting with kids getting dropped off. Our student support team did a lot of hard work, working with everyone, as I mentioned, at the mid-year. And then last but not least, Panorama, we got better and better at that. And I really think that that's going to be a big driver moving forward of sort of identifying kids. And, these surveys might just seem like numbers, but for us, we can't wait to get the results and sort of dive into them a little bit, because it does tell us a lot about where our kids are in a way that we might not understand. So Panorama's been a big thing already, but it's about to be a much bigger deal as we get better at it.
Just to pick up on that note, Panorama not only pulls in the surveys, but it also pulls in attendance from student information system and pulls in grades as well. So you have all that information in one area. And I'm sorry?
And assessment data.
And assessment data. So that allows the support teams at each school to really look at trends that may be happening for their students at grade levels or even in specific classes. So that's really important. And River Valley is River Valley Counseling. Mm-hmm. That's our therapeutic group that we've been partnering with for the last few years. Thank you, Dr. Allen.
Yeah, thank you.
I think we're moving to the high school and Mr. Page.
Good evening, everyone. So the approach I took with the presentation, just because we had met in March, was to just provide some updates on some of the different goals and action steps that we had already, made a lot of progress on, back in the early spring. So one of the things we talked about at our March meeting was just our resource assessment in terms of some of the resources that we have available to us and some of the things we're looking to revise and do differently, based on what we identified our needs were. And one of our big focuses this year, which I know I talked about at the last meeting, was our focus on our math intervention work, where we did free up one of our math teachers, Mr. Gonzalez, quite a bit this year in order to do some targeted intervention work, both with some MCAS support, but also with curriculum support for some kids who are struggling. Which I am going to talk about that a little bit when we get to that third goal as well. But one thing that we worked on this past spring, and I got to give a shout out to Ms. Brown on this one for being a big facilitator of this, is identifying a new math curriculum that we're looking to put into place next year with our algebra, geometry, algebra 2 classes. We're going to start to layer that in as we get into the fall. And that's it's just through McGraw-Hill, but they also have this great component of their program. It's the Alex program, which allows us to do some, real-time identification of needs and weaknesses in student learning, and also remediate some of those skills. So we're looking forward to utilizing that program when we get into the fall, especially when it comes to some of our math intervention work. Other area to highlight, if I just jump down to where it says restructure the guidance department. So looking at that piece too, one of the things that they worked really hard on this year, which I think is going to be awesome as we go into the fall, is just revamping their guidance curriculum. And they did that in conjunction with our career counselor, where they're going to be alternating who works with which grade in any given month. So just for example, if you're looking at September, our guidance department is going to be focusing on the 9th and 12th graders, where they're going to be talking, if you're looking at the 9th graders, they're going to be talking about setting them up with Naviance, explaining what that is. 12th grade, they're starting that college application process. But then when you get into the 10th and 11th graders, that's where our career counselor is going to be working with those students. That's Mr. Macarini. He's going to be going through with the 10th graders, working on things like resume building, goal setting. And with the 11th grade, he's going to work on, their interest profile and work-based learning plan skills. So something they spent a lot of time in. They're mapping that out over the course of the year, looking to push into our English classes in the fall. So they're going to be doing a lot of curriculum work in the classes with the kids, which I think is pretty cool. And then just kind of jumping down to some of the information that we talked about in March as well with our graduation coach, just to provide some updates in terms of the data there, just to highlight some of the successes. We had in March, we were at 11 students who were able to recover credit for some of their classes, based on classes they had failed, and we were trying to remediate. And then we had, at that point, there was 11 students who were still working towards their credit recovery. Since then, we've been able to have 27 different students across the high school be able to recover credit through our graduation coach's credit recovery program, utilizing Ingenuity. And as a total, we also have 40 total classes from those 27 kids where they've been able to recover credit. So obviously, you do have a couple kids who are recovering multiple classes, because we have some kids who are obviously at risk. And, that graduation coach has been a huge help this year, where she's able to take that, some of those targeted populations of students that need that additional layer of support and really focus in and give them the things that they need. And then the last piece on here, just talking about River Valley Counseling Services. Right now, we have 22 students who are receiving services through River Valley. And as Dr. Allen said, we also have students who are still receiving those services over the course of the summer. And we're even at the point where River Valley has actually been able to hire a second counselor to service our students, just because, the need is there. So it's been great working with them. I think we've made a lot of progress on this goal this year, which we're very happy with.
Thank you, Mr. Page. Moving into a goal around instructional practice that really centers on how to support our staff with professional development and give them the tools that they need to provide that 21st century learning environment in their classrooms. And as you look at the sort of the end of the year evidence, probably our largest accomplishment, and we'll outline this as we go further, is the selection of the new math curriculum, and that's K-12, as Mr. Page was just finishing off talking about what they did at the high school, and then the ELA curriculum K-5. And that was an aggressive timeline, No one doubts that. It was really aggressive. It was challenging to get folks participating and moving along and facilitating that. And that was something that we did. Ms. Brown did incredibly well with the help of a huge number of people to make that happen. So we're excited that we're going to be able to start to implement that as we move forward. Then we have a number of things here that are still in process. Making sure that we finalize that scope and sequence, that we create the handbook for grading. These are things that we're going to hopefully finalize as we start to implement this curriculum. And that we continue to work with our ELL staff to make sure that we're aligning to the 2020 WEDA standards. That was something that happened throughout the school year and will continue to happen as we start work again in late August. And then obviously looking at our curriculum guides for English and history at the high school. Those are things that we're going to have to pick up as we begin the next school year, as well as the scope and sequence for 6 to 8 science. Walk us through a couple of
Sure.
the points.
So like Mr. Smith said, the biggest thing was those new high quality curricular materials. And I think it's really important to say that we have pretty strong instruction. We have excellent teachers, and you also need those high quality curricular materials to make it really work. I think both students and teachers deserve those. So it was very exciting that we were able to persevere through a very fast-paced process, all due to DESE giving us amazing grants, but needing to figure things out very quickly to get illustrative math K to 8, the reveal math through McGraw-Hill for 9 through 12, and for ELA Wit and Wisdom, which is K to 5, and then the foundations are those foundational skills, which will happen K to 3. So we are working on rollouts right now and implementation to make this sustainable, a 5-year plan. When I wrote to families, I said, you won't necessarily see all of these things in your child's classroom next year, but eventually that's the plan to get all of these things in place. Professional development is offered on a voluntary basis this summer, and then we'll continue to offer it obviously through the professional days in the school year. And we continuing to use ST Math for instruction as a personalized instructional tool that goes along with the instruction. It just meets kids where they're at, and they have better data. The way that you can access the data to help kids has improved quite a bit. Like it says here, we've had professional development on universal design for learning. So that idea that, we remove barriers so all students can access the curriculum, which is something that we'll continue to work on. And the K-2 teachers receive letters training, which is about how to teach the science of reading basically, and how that affects our instruction. And they'll have access to that over the summer. I've had quite a few reach out already who are starting up summer professional development already. So that's great. And then we will, as a leadership team, utilize instructional rounds to help us with really supporting the implementation of the new curricular materials next year. So there's a lot going on. It's all very exciting. And, like Mr. Smith said, we couldn't have done it without the participation of a lot of folks who already had a lot going on. So thanks.
Just to add to the instructional round, some of that's actually going to start this week in terms of just our leadership team reflecting on this year, but also starting to focus on next year. And what does that look like? And how do we support each other as a team to make sure that we're looking at work and providing feedback that both is valuable to the person receiving the feedback, but also coordinated and synchronized so that you're not getting different feedback from the group as we move through buildings. And so that's exciting because it's actually sort of revisiting something we did probably 6-7 years ago. And so we're gonna work on how we do that and how we do that well. And that'll be some of our summer work as we start to prepare for the fall.
And Heather, the two additional high quality instructional materials that the district already has are Haggerty and math recovery as well, correct? Those are remaining in place.
So Haggerty for, yes, phonological awareness will remain in place. And then the AVMR as an assessment tool to then kind of target instruction, definitely. So yeah, we're not getting rid of all the good stuff, right? We're just, taking some of the opportunities from DESE to get curricular materials that are better aligned.
And I'm sure, as you mentioned before, the schedule, especially at the elementary schools, will support with being able to get professional development done in a more efficient fashion where educators will necessarily have to be pulled before or after school, but based on the schedule adjustments, be able to utilize time within the school day to receive the necessary training in order to implement the materials as intended.
Yeah, so from the outside providers, like for example, foundations, they want to meet with teachers 6 times throughout the school year for 45-minute increments. But also, just using that time internally to unpack lessons together and then go back and reflect on what worked, what didn't. So really just using that time together to have the time to learn with and from each other as we go through this process. It's exciting.
And it's exciting to see, to Mr. Smith's point too, like those two goals really intersecting at that point, being able to think about the collaborative opportunities that we talked about in goal 1, really coming up against the high quality instructional materials and subsequent professional development coming up, which is great to see.
All together around the circle.
Okay, so hello, everybody, and here is our, I'm sorry?
Sorry, I was just going to introduce you, but you're already on a roll, Mr. Pradek. Go ahead.
Yeah. So here's our progress in mathematics. Our instructional practice goal was focused solely, or the majority of it, on mathematics. That's what the data was telling us at the beginning of the year. All 3 elementary schools have teachers participating in the illustrative math pilot. That was also a curriculum that was vetted through our selection process in the math portion of the curriculum committee for selection for new curriculum and materials going forward. So we do have a number of teachers familiar with that program already. We also had training provided by our coaches in Graham Fletcher building math fluency toolkits, which is a good practice that we usually begin our math blocks with for building fluency in mathematics with students. AVMR, as you mentioned, is a staple of what we do for screening, for identifying students needing deeper instruction into number sense, and using it as an instructional tool in the classroom and as an intervention tool for students in small groups. And then all 3 elementary schools have improved their utilization of ST Math as a teaching and learning tool. Some of the highlights that we wanted to really show that shined through for the school committee, number 1 was iReady for 3rd grade. This is 3rd grade for our district 3rd graders, not just one school. In the fall, 18% of our 3rd graders were on grade level according to iReady. Now in the spring, 71% of our 3rd graders are on grade level according to iReady. So incredible amount of work went into the school year, getting students back to normal school, instructing them at a high level, and getting this level of progress for our 3rd grade was a big highlight, with 53% growth in that area. For K2 in numbers and operations, there were 13% of our K2 students that were 2 years below grade level at the beginning of the year. By the end of the year, there was only 1% of our K2 population 2 years below grade level. That means we took 61 students out of being 2 years below grade level at the K2 level. So that I thought was another big indicator of success. We've mentioned ST Math as a core component of what we do in our schools. We solved K5 1,741,965 puzzles. A lot of these ST Math puzzles are very challenging. The biggest highlight that came out of this was Meadowbrook School hit the 1 million puzzle mark. So 1 million of those puzzles were solved by the Meadowbrook students, and they had a celebration, for that, of course. And then another ST Math highlight was we set a goal to make sure, because we understand this is not our entire curriculum. This is part of our curriculum. So we set a goal to have 60% of the ST Math syllabus completed. We hit on average K5 61%. And then we have little Fiona there, a third grader at Maple Shade. She'd love to tell you all about ST Math. So go ahead and play the video, please. Good. Could you tell us a little bit about ST Math, how it works, and what you like about it?
Yes.
Go ahead.
So, I like ST Math because it gives you a lot of challenging puzzles, and when it does, it makes it really hard, and then it makes it fun when it's challenging. It's not as fun when it's easy.
It's fun when it's challenging and not as fun when it's easy. Can you show us how you solve a challenging puzzle?
So, first I do the addition, and 3 plus 3 is 6, and 4 plus 4 is 8, and 8 plus 6 is 14. So then I put it at 14 yards, and then I just press the button, and it does that, and then I solved it. Because you can walk across, and it makes the dig, and also it in the frame.
And it also fit in the frame. And what type of shape is that?
It's a parallelogram.
A parallelogram. Great job. Thank you very much, Fiona. If you could say hello and goodbye to our viewers.
Hello and goodbye.
Thank you. So she did that in one take, I promise. That was pretty good.
Thank you, Mr. Fredette.
Good.
Next up, we have Birchland Park and Mr. Martin.
Would be me.
Okay.
All right. Good evening, everybody. So as you can see, what we did at Birchland Park Middle School in regards to math, this was our first full year of standards-based grading. As you may remember, we had adopted standards-based grading in the 2019-2020 school year and had to cut our efforts short based on COVID. So we are happy to announce that we had a very successful year in the realm of standards-based grading that also saw our math department having multiple release days. So going back to the conversation that we had earlier about the importance of teachers being able to collaborate with one another and having that time, our teachers made sure that they shared best practices with one another around standards-based grading so that they could grow their skills from within. So we're excited that we had our first full year, and I have no doubt that Birchland will be continued to be successful moving forward in the world of standards-based grading. The math department also completed its curriculum renewal and chose illustrative math, which is just ideal because the elementary schools have adopted illustrative math. So having it at Birchland as well allows more consistency of a child's math instruction as they move throughout the grades and from one school to the next. The science department completed year 1 of the Open SciEd grant and a new curriculum. And they attended trainings throughout the year and will continue to do so throughout the summer. The ELA department continued the work that began last year around priority standards and examining, which skills are most important for the students to be able to absorb as they move through 6 through 8. And they made sure that the assessments that they were putting in place within their curriculum aligned with the identified skills chosen from the priority standards. The social studies department really started looking ahead to next year around what the new standards mean for their curriculum and which standards need to be taught in what grades. And so that conversation has begun and will continue to grow next year. The DLCS department continued to develop 21st century learning experiences in a number of our specials classes, as you can see, including computer science, coding, STEAM, tech ed, and TV studio. And then moving out of pandemic regulations and moving back towards more traditional or not traditional. I don't want to code what I'm about to say next as traditional because it isn't traditional, but more commonplace at Birchland Park Middle School. And what we pride ourselves on is escape rooms. We were able to see more escape rooms back in the mix of things, which is just wonderful to see because this style of learning really allows students to learn in an entertaining and rigorous way with real life applicability. And similarly, we were able to open up our maker spaces as well. And this cannot be understated. It allows students to be able to utilize the design process and merges creativity, collaboration, and critical thinking through application and hands-on learning. So all in all, we might, like Tim had said earlier, we started the year in so many ways with uncertainty about what the year would hold. And we concluded incredibly strong with our students going back to the styles of learning that makes Birchland Park Middle School the best middle school in the USA.
Thank you, Mr. Martin.
And that's it. That's my last slide for Birchland Park Middle School. Mystery from here on out, everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Moving on to the high school.
All right, so just provide some quick updates from where we were in March, because obviously since our March meeting, we only had one half day of professional development left. So during that last day of PD, we were able to wrap up our work within the classroom. They were able to bring their program to a nice conclusion. And the other couple of things that we worked on during the time between now and then is one, that identification and in purchase of that new math curriculum, like we were talking about earlier, Reveal Math, and that component that I also talked about, that Alex program, which will help us do some of our intervention work. So our math department did have some professional development on Thursday of last week with Ms. Brown and the company, just to kind of get an idea of what the program is, how it works, with the different resources that they have. The other thing that we've been working on recently is since that March PD, we also had our program of studies presentation back in April to the school committee, where we did get the high school foundations course approved. And since then, we've been working with different staff in the building, primarily in the English department, but not limited to the English department, to start writing that curriculum, focusing on the executive functioning skills, research skills, and the digital literacy standards put forth by the state of Massachusetts. So I think what's going to be pretty cool is going into the fall, we're going to have 7 different teachers teaching this course. It's going to be across 4 different departments. We have a teacher from our social studies department, our librarian, some English teachers, a foreign language teacher, all collaborating and putting these their thoughts together to write this curriculum. So it's been great to see they're working on it this summer in order to get us ready for the fall.
Thank you, Mr. Page. That brings us fully around the circle to our goal around continuous learning and achievement. And so this is where hopefully everything that we've been talking about allows our students to show growth, soar, and achieve. Soar as in SOAR. So like an eagle. So our end of the year benchmarks, we wanted to look at that iReady growth and see 40 to 60% in the annual typical growth. And I think you're going to see that we met or exceeded some of these targets. And then in the stretch growth, 20 to 30% on iReady. Obviously, we have to see where the state goes with accountability to see how we did on the growth there on MCAS, and we will anxiously await that for the fall, but we'll unveil a lot of the growth that we saw and the achievement we saw this spring on iReady. Ms. Brown's going to walk us through.
Of course, iReady, we use K-8, so we'll have to wait till the next round of PSATs and to see that growth, but what we have for now. And just to remind folks of the color coding, the dark green means students are mid or on grade or above grade level. The light green is early on grade level, so they're on grade level, but towards maybe what would be expected for the beginning of that year. Yellow is 1 grade below that pinkish color is 2 grades below, and the darker red is 3 or more grade levels below. And again, this is, one assessment at one time. But as we get more and more information from kids, we can see the trends and how they tend to perform. So this is growth, and Ready does 2 things. They have the typical growth. So they see how kids who performed their performance compared to other kids who perform that way and how they typically grow. And then there's stretch growth, because sometimes your typical growth is still not going to have you grow enough to get caught up to grade level. So there's a stretch growth, which is kind of more of something to aspire to, that you want kids to get to so that they can actually get closer to getting to where they need to be grade level wise. So this is comparing to 2019, 2020, which was the last year we had that. It's comparable to some extent. And it's, you can see that Birchland Park Middle School this year, 63% of their kids met their annual typical growth goal, whereas in the past it was 45. 31 got that stretch goal, which is amazing, and then 17 in the past. So obviously it's quite an improvement. And then you see that percent of students with improved placement, meaning the percentage of kids who moved up from 37 to 52. And you see this across the board. 60% met their growth in Maple Shade, 35 met their stretch. 57 of Meadowbrook met their growth target, and the typical target, I should say, and the 34 met the stretch growth, and then 69 at Mountain View, and 39% met their stretch growth. All of these numbers are higher than the ones below and are pretty incredible and exceeded what we had projected. So,
Heather, why such a difference in the 2 cohorts? Why are any
of
theories?
course, you're right. You're comparing 2 different groups of kids. I think it's a combination of things. And, obviously we have teachers who are great instructors. Some people have been incorporating different kinds of things in their curriculum, and they've also had more time to meet with each other and kind of figure out when kids are not doing as well, what they can do. And they use their collective knowledge to figure that out. So whatever they're doing, it's working. And what's nice about comparing cohorts for growth is it's growth, right? It's not necessarily achievement where it's apples and oranges. But I can show you that too.
And as you'll see, one of the other things is that we know from our fall preliminary data that we had students that really needed us to move them. They had roughly a year and a half of different education than they've had previously. And so we really needed to move. And our staff, I think, did an exceptional job in coming to their assistance.
So is that part of the reason? Are we not going to see this kind of growth in future years potentially because of the deficit that was created based on the learning style?
You can still grow even if you're at grade level. Just grow beyond, right?
Yeah, but the stretch is it's a bigger growth, right?
Yeah.
Typically.
So
Yeah. I mean, you're right.
if we're starting here instead of here,
Yes.
so you're gonna have more growth. So I guess we're gonna find out the ending.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
And then the next slide is the actual achievement. So you can see, in the beginning of the year, we had 44% of kids, in early or above grade level. And then we have, and I can't do this math that quickly in my head, 72%. Thank you. So you can see that in just the achievement, the green growing and the yellow shrinking. But the goal always being to get as much of that green as possible. And so as, like you said, if kids are starting closer to grade level, then we will see that.
You see a smaller stretch.
Right.
Yeah, but you can still have the typical growth.
And this is also further reading, and this is across all schools. So just so you can see that this is occurring in every school. This is not a phenomenon in just one. And the same thing happened for math.
I think to the question that you were asking,
Yeah.
Mr. Thompson, you know, what will be interesting next year is to take a look at what does our typical growth look like?
Yeah.
Because now that we have more time to collaborate, we're more comfortable with the materials we're using. And I think our staff's exceptional. So the goal would be to keep these numbers in typical growth. And obviously, we're going to have, as you look at sort of where we started with percentages in the red, there's going to be people that are going to need that stretch growth. You know, certainly we had more than we're used to seeing in the East Long Meadow Public Schools, starting out with such a deficit at the beginning of the year.
So
And we still have room to grow. I mean, obviously, you know, these are high numbers, but it would be lovely to have all kids meet their growth target, right? So it's always about trying to get more and more kids to meet their growth target and, you know, that stretch growth target that will get them closer to grade level.
Is it a reasonable assumption to say that if we go back to the last slide, that on diagnostic 3, you mentioned the 72% are on or at early growth, or it's not at grade level, right? Should that reflect in next year's fall? It should be similar to that. In theory, they shouldn't slip and then be on their next grade level. So that the percentage next year should be higher than 44.
Well, diagnostic 1,
Yes.
in theory, should look very similar to this.
But if at the end of the school year, 72% are on or near grade level, shouldn't at the beginning of the following year, they should be close to the same?
Yeah, and except for now, instead of if I'm a first grader on first grade, now I'm starting at the beginning of second grade.
Right. Right, but isn't the end of first, being on grade level at the end of first,
Yes.
close to being on grade
You're
level at the,
that shaded line, you're either mid or above grade level. So
yeah,
it's kind of hard to see which ones are above grade level, but those kids who would be above grade level would be starting off kind of ahead of the starting line.
right. So we should assume that the next year's results will be different than this year's results based on the diagnostic 1 in the fall.
Right.
We'll see.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
But the hope is always continuing improvement.
Yeah.
And we should be able to actually pull a report then, because it will be
Historical.
So we didn't have the capacity to do that because it was really year 1.5
Right.
of the implementation when the pandemic hit. So to be able to look back at historical data next year would really present us as the first opportunity to look at those reports. So diagnostic 1 to diagnostic 1, like with years that were more typical.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Diagnos 1, I think next year will look different than Diagnos 1 this year.
Right.
Look closer to Diagnostic 3 than
Yes.
it is Diagnostic 1 based on the situation.
Yep.
It's kind of like back when we used to do the cohorts with the MCAS.
Right.
Yeah.
Same thing.
But they should be able to, meaning the company, should be able to provide us with that type of reporting. So we should be able to get exactly what you're asking for.
Because I imagine we would assume most of our students are closer at grade level, right?
They had a more typical school year
Yeah.
this year. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm impressed with the kids. Not that I'm not with the teachers and the curriculum and all, but I'm impressed that the kids were able to do what they did in terms of success.
Kids are pretty
They
resilient.
are resilient.
They're
yeah.
resilient. They, you know,
And you know, when we talk about the social emotional, sometimes why are we worried so much about that? But it's all intertwined, right? If I don't believe I can achieve them, I'm not going to, right? If I don't feel like I belong in a place, my brain's going to be thinking about other things than academics. So all of these things connect. And so I think a lot of the social emotional skills of perseverance and growth mindset are also helping with this because, you know, that's it's very connected.
it's all part of it.
And I think like you just named those skills, Heather, sometimes we say social emotional, and I think greater clarity around what those types of teachings are, which the same way Mr. Hutchins explained when he spoke about the Mountain View work around second steps. But it is perseverance, growth mindset, grit, empathy, like all of those skills are really what we're talking about when we use this umbrella term, social emotional learning. Right. Those soft skills that help kids to access curriculum, which are totally necessary.
And so this is just the math comparison. Same thing. A lot of growth. So it's very exciting to see this in both categories. Oops, I cut off the your little key here, but it's the stripes, green, yellow. So it's from the leftover, the number of kids who are in that category from where they were in the beginning of the year.
Just to give you a quick summation, we're excited that we're seeing that the typical annual growth is well above the target that we had set. The stretch growth, as we were talking about, is also above the target. Some of that has to do with the fact that we were in a different place than we were used to being as a school district.
So when we set our targets for next year, we'll have to take that into consideration.
Absolutely.
Because we don't want to, this is an anomaly, I think, to some extent.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. And we know that the selection of the new curricular materials is going to help us move forward. And so that's something that we're excited about and to begin that implementation. Also, the fact that we're creating schedules. We had schedules this year that achieved more collaborative time, and next year it's going to become even more consistent. And so that's something that is needed and we feel is helping. I think our elementary folks are leading us off with this goal. Ms. Lodi.
Yep. So our last goal is sort of an alphabet soup of sorts, if you will. It's focused on MTSS, CPT, and WIN. Hopefully you're starting to get a little bit familiar with some of these acronyms and what they mean, but just a quick refresher in case. MTSS stands for Multi-Tiered Systems of Support. And all three of our elementary schools have their school-based teams up and running this year. Our teams all have a slightly different makeup, but our focus of our work is all consistent across the schools. And that is to use data in order to strengthen and inform both our core instruction and to identify students in need of intervention. Above and beyond that work, we have previously shared that each of our schools has taken on some smaller projects as unique focuses, ranging from things like book studies to the creation of a blueprint to guide our work or flowcharts to streamline the team's work. The other piece of this goal, or the other two pieces of this goal, CPT and WIN, are really tied together, with CPT standing for Common Planning Time, which you've been hearing a lot about throughout this presentation, and WIN being what I need, or in reality, our intervention and enrichment block. All three elementary schools have established Common Planning Time this year to varying degrees. Teachers and coaches are the ones facilitating that work. They've gone through specific training in order to guide that work. During Common Planning Time, the teams use a process for looking at student work in order to identify areas that maybe need either intervention or enrichment. They discuss best practices and ideas for reteaching and extending that learning, with the ultimate goal of that work then feeding into the WIN block. So that data that they looked at should guide the instruction in the intervention and enrichment block. We feel that these structures, alongside of a lot of other factors, because as you've also heard, all of what we do is very, very much entwined, have led to some really wonderful growth that we've seen across all of our schools. I think you've seen that highlighted on sort of a larger, broader level. And Michael broke the math down a little bit for you, so I'll break the literacy scores down a little bit for you. We've seen some pretty incredible increases, with grade 3 literacy increasing from 51 to 77% proficient, with a 26%, or proficient probably wouldn't be the best word, but at or above grade level, 26% gain. Fourth grade at Maple Shade has moved from 38 to 56% for an 18% gain, and fifth grade from 34 to 60% for a 26% gain. At Mountain View, grade 3 has moved from 54 to 80% with a 26% gain. Fourth grade from 31 to 60 for a 29% gain. And fifth grade from 48 to 66 for an 18% gain. And at Meadowbrook in kindergarten, our kindergarten team really hit it out of the park. They went from 53% to 90% at or above grade level for a 37% gain. First grade made huge gains as well, 21% proficient to 77% proficient for a 56% gain. And second grade from 27 to 69 for a 42% gain. And one thing that really stood out to me when I was looking at our data, if you look at K to 2 together in the fall, we had 11% of our students in that 2 or more grade level below category. And by the spring administration, that was down to 1% of our students, which was pretty fantastic. And we just wanted to really leave you with a few words from our teachers and coach facilitators sharing their thoughts about Common Planning Time.
At Meadowbrook School, we're a unique building, and in order for our teachers to have this collaborative time, teachers had to waive one of their very limited prep times and meet weekly in teams. Due to our schedule, teams were made up of 4 teachers, splitting each grade level into 2 teams. Teachers had the opportunity to meet weekly to discuss student work, share ideas, and try things out and discuss the student growth. The department heads and myself were trained over the summer so we could facilitate these meetings. I'm going to share with you a couple of the things that we felt were important takeaways from this year's work.
Okay, well, in kindergarten, we appreciated the time to meet as a team. We were divided into 2 groups. I facilitated one of the groups. We used that time to look at data, to analyze the data, talk about best practice, and share ideas on how to best meet the needs of our students. So with the time spent together as a team, it was very valuable. We appreciated it.
I worked on, I was in charge of one of the first grade teams, and just as Judy said, it was a great time to get together. Although people were a little apprehensive at first, it ended up being a lot of growth. I would say that the team that I led, we tended to focus on reading most of the year, and we found it very valuable getting together and discussing our Hegarty data, and then we would look for areas of need and plan lessons to hit those areas and reassess. It was valuable time, well spent.
And I facilitated one of the second grade teams, the pink team. And as the other ladies here have said, we did similar things as they did, except we took a look at IM through the year, the math program. And what we found really beneficial is, even at the last meeting, is that we concentrated on proactive ideas heading into next year, such as creating prerequisite assessments, coming up with a collaborative teacher toolbox, and other things such as that. So we do look forward to continuing that time together next year.
And I had the privilege of facilitating 3 teams, 1 at each grade level. And we focused on math throughout the year. And it was a really great opportunity for us to start digging into back fluency and looking at the Graham-Fletcher kits and being able to use that time to learn as teachers and also use student work to help us drive our discussions and our learning. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lodi.
Yeah.
I think we're now moving on to Birchland Park.
Yeah,
Mr. Pearson.
that's going to be me.
Okay.
Maybe we should have saved this one for Connors for his final slide for Birchland so we could go out with a bang. Kind of the bit of the brags slide. I know we've already kind of gone over some of the iReady data, but you can see here the numbers kind of speak for themselves. But I can talk a little bit about the importance of the planning time and how it led to this kind of numbers that we're seeing here, this kind of great improvement that we saw. Our action steps were all about using that collaborative time with coaches and stuff to look at our formative assessments and how we could use them to drive instruction. In the ELA, we were using iReady mastery checks and MCAS style questions to make sure we were delivering universal application of standards-based skills, that we were looking at the entire standard, asking it in all the ways that MCAS would ask. And similarly in math, we were looking at the iReady mastery checks and teacher-created formative assessments to drive the standards-based grading. Diagnostic 2 and our growth monitoring assessments were huge aids in driving the movement in and out of tiered classes and getting kids into the proper interventions that they would need to get them the skills that they needed to help close those deficits. iReady, there was a good question asked about why were we seeing such a huge increase? And I'm sure some of it was certainly related to pandemic-driven deficits, but we can't discount the effort that a lot of our staff also put in to making iReady really work this year. We had weekly, monthly iReady incentives and rewards as we really strive to increase student motivation. There's the Oscars, there's the Grammys, but the true crown jewel of the award season is certainly the iReadies that we have at Birchland. and the covenant statutes to go with iReady achievement. So it was a big push on our part to make sure that there wasn't iReady fatigue with our kids, to keep them motivated and moving forward. You know, we had weekly iReady work time for the students built into the schedule this year to make sure it wasn't something that they had to do at home on their own all the time, plenty of time built into the schedule. We made sure to collaborate with our science and social studies teachers, you know, with the English and the math teachers, on how they could monitor the iReady individualized instruction and identify those kids that were marked as struggling or even shut off in some domains and give them what they needed to be back on track. Our math intervention teacher and coach were providing small group, one-to-one support for students that were struggling in the MyPath lessons. Again, getting them past those roadblocks and getting them back onto the path to success. And in the end, I think our numbers here really, you know, speak for themselves. We see huge numbers towards typical growth. You know, the median number of 133% in math, 183% in reading. And even more importantly, you can see when we talk about closing the gaps, the number of students from Diagnostic 1 that were below grade level and how that number was drastically reduced, you know, by the end of the year data. Even amid, it could have been testing fatigue. In Diagnostic 3, we still had students showing how much they had grown during the year. And of course, there's a lot of work to be done, but we're proud of the steps we took, and the results seem to show that we're moving in the right direction. So we need to keep that momentum moving forward so that we can keep those progress goals where we want them to be, students meeting them. But I think that this year was certainly a great step in that direction, and the numbers seem to go along with that.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson.
Thank you.
And that brings us to the high school. Mr. Page is rounding us up.
Okay, so just to kind of bring the whole presentation to a close here, I'm just going to talk quickly about some of the progress that we continue to make when it comes to some of that formative data collection in our commonly taught MCAS related courses. English, math, and science are continuing to utilize the different approaches that they've identified as ways to collect that formative data in the departments. English is still using programs like Common Lit. Where we're going to see a transition in math is prior they were using multiple programs like Albert.io and iExcel. To next year we'll be shifting to the ALEX adaptive learning system in the Reveal Math program for our Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2 courses. And also talking, obviously, oh, sorry, I got to back up a step. Also just talking about our science classes. They're continuing to utilize that CER rubric for their lab reports to collect data and see where their students' progress are with making claims, evidence collection, and reasoning. Just to talk about a little bit about the scheduling that we've talked about, where we try to identify different collaborative time for our staff. So obviously at the high school, we are shifting back to full year programming next year. Within that planning, we worked with all of our departments to have conversations around what that homework load is going to look like now that all of our kids are taking full year programming. So that conversation has been ongoing throughout all of our departments, especially in our cores, but also for our commonly taught classes. So things like English 9 or algebra or biology, classes like that. We have been working with our department heads and the teachers in those different departments to make sure that some of the grading practices connected to those courses are more common than they have been in the past, just because kids should be having common experiences in some of those commonly taught courses. The other thing that we did work on going into next year, and when it comes to our collaborative planning time, our focus is definitely, we try to take that student-centered approach. So next year with our 9th grade, we are aligning the duty blocks of a number of our standard level teachers who are 9th grade teachers for teachers who teach content areas like biology, English 9, algebra, geometry, some of our foreign language classes, the world history class, give them that same duty block so they'll be able to get together, meet, collaborate, and make sure that they're able to, support some of their students, especially the ones who might be struggling. So we do have a little bit of what we see as a team model at the high school level for some of our standard-based courses where those teachers can get together and collaborate. And that wraps up the high school.
Thank you, Mr. Page.
Can I add something to Mr. Page? 1 second. I just got the email, Mr. Page, for how you guys are doing the summer reading at the high school.
Yep.
And I have been whining about this for years. It is simply brilliant. Brilliant. The suggestions from teachers, and then take it, leave it, or read a book you want. Like, how fantastic is that?
Yeah. So Thank you, Ms. Boucher. We're definitely taking an approach where it's opt-in this year. It's going to be an optional summer reading program where the English department, they came up with this entirely on their own. I think it's a phenomenal idea. They got different book recommendations from teachers from all different content areas. If you look at the first teacher on that list, it's Ms. Crane, who teaches math. You see Ms. Faulkner on there from the classical modern language department, Ms. McGillivray from science. But then a lot of our English teachers contributed books as well. I even have my own recommendation in there for the kids. I think it's going to be a cool and a different approach than what we've done in the past. And the idea behind it is to just increase that passion and love for independent reading.
It'll be interesting to see what the kids pick on their own too, as
Yep.
opposed to being told what to do. So
Well, and this is
great.
coming from, there was a book study that the English department did, and part of that was how do we kind of reinstill that level of learning, and how do you use time for book recommendations and things. And a lot of the English teachers are saying, I don't want to lose this time. The kids are actually reading for the first time in a long time on their own for fun.
Yeah, no, it's
So
great.
I think it's great that you're offering that choice.
Awesome.
Thank you. That brings us full circle around all of our goals, how they're connected to each other, and they're happening in our schools. So at this point, we would open it up for final questions.
I just appreciate that the presentation really speaks to the cyclical nature of the goals, that you really started out by laying a foundation and that our students and our staff feel that sense of well-being and that sense of belonging. Then you led us into how we're increasing not just the quantity, but the quality of resources providing our faculty around high-quality instructional materials that we have that are resource staff, which can then lead to greater results, which we saw evidence of impact. But I also appreciate that at no point did anyone claim that we've arrived, rather that we are on a path to really help our students continue to meet with academic success, but that this is all really interconnected. So I look forward to seeing where our students start off the year, as Greg mentioned, and then really seeing how we continue to see evidence of impact of all of the pieces that you've laid a foundation for this year, not only from central office, but really evidenced by the work that's happened at the building. So just really appreciate all the efforts that came forward to really, demonstrate this level of growth.
Yeah, it's clear that the students and the staff both got to the work at hand. The data definitely shows that. Make up that amount of deficit is good on behalf of everybody.
I think everybody was happy to be back in face-to-face. And I think that played a big part in this. And I don't disagree with anything you said, Greg, but I think you can expect to see this in the future, because as we return to whatever the new normal looks like, it's all going to be relative, I think.
Mm-hmm.
What's pretty remarkable, though, is that teachers did spend a lot of time getting kids back into it.
Oh, yeah.
In those kinds of
Yeah.
skills, and still were able to get this academic growth. I mean, you can't have that academic growth if you don't have the skills of how do you cooperate with each other.
But even at the younger grades where they,
That's what I'm talking about.
yeah, because they had never met their classmates and, their friends. It was all through Zoom or whatever, Great job.
Nice.
Great job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It was just very impressive to see how coordinated it became at all buildings, at all. So that's our hope is to pick up at that point as we begin next year. So that's the work of our leadership team this summer to figure out, okay, how do we do that to make sure that that type of engagement and coordination is there, but also to the point Mrs. Trulio made, that the support is there. Because without the support, it's not just the students feeling like they belong, but as we said, is the staff feeling like they belong? We know that the pandemic had an interesting impact on educators across the country, where many just left the profession.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
And we don't want to see that here.
Right.
So we have an incredible staff, and we want to retain that staff. So we'll end there. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Enjoy your evening.
Thank you very much.
Right.
that noise.
Right, so we have Spartan Walkway.
Yes, you do. So in your packet, Principal at the high school, Frank Page, is requesting that committee accept the following donation for the Spartan Walkway. And this is $175 from the Calcedice family. And I hope I pronounced that correctly. So if you would approve that donation, we can get that deposited.
Okay, I move to accept the $175 cash donation on behalf of the Calcedice family.
Yeah.
All right, for a brick for the Spartan Walkway.
Okay, motion made by Beth,
Second?
second by Antonella. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. And that motion carries 5-0. We have to formally approve.
Move to approve the superintendent's summative evaluation as presented.
Motion made by Bill.
Second.
Second by Beth. I would just like to add that during the discussion, I think this year again presented its own set of challenges. Even withstanding that, there was many tough decisions that had to happen relative to budget, relative to our continued progress around our work with the MSBA, and just lots of pieces of our community that really had to come together around some critical areas. And I think that our superintendent continues to not just make sound decisions, but also make decisions that aren't always necessarily popular, but are in the best interest of students and of moving our district forward. And for that, I really commend him and look forward to seeing what those decisions, where those decisions lead our schools and our teachers and our students as we continue to move forward with wonderful initiatives across the district. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
And I will commend you for very well put. Because it summarized the entire year.
Yep.
It was difficult. We were always wrong. No matter what we did, we were wrong. We'll leave it at that.
Yeah, and you looked cool as a cucumber while you were doing it.
Yeah.
At least out in public, so.
Sometimes I think my face was similar to that tablecloth. My whole leg.
But it was not camera.
No, thank you all, because it's a team effort. There's no way we could do this. It's it's cliche, but it takes a village. And coming out of the pandemic, it took more than just the village. Thank you.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. And that motion carries 5-0. And lastly, we have joint conference.
So this is just an early bird special. If people are interested in attending the joint conference, which is the Mass Association of School Committees and the Mass Association of School Superintendents, the conference takes place in November, that first week in November, from the 2nd to the 5th. And if you are interested in in participating and going, we can get a registration in by July 15th. You save some money on the registration. It's a reduced rate, $450 as opposed to $545.
And I will let you know, they did move the delegate assembly back to Wednesday afternoon. They moved it off Saturday morning and made because number of
That's
complaints.
increased participation.
That's nice.
Better plan.
It might because people were leaving.
Right.
In the historical history of the conference after the general session on Friday, 3/4 of the people leave. And they finally realized that maybe having it back on Wednesday might get people there a little bit earlier. Just throwing it out there.
Good. I don't know if I'm going to know about 15th of July, but I hope I can go this year.
Well, if you are interested, we will put in the registration for you. As the title indicates, it's a joint conference, so it's for school committee members and superintendents. There's a lot of valuable information that gets presented. Mass School Building Authority is always there, so it's always good to attend and let them know that we're part of the process and we're understanding and following the structures. There's also a lot of valuable information that's presented just in not only policy, but trends in education and where things might be going in the state. And that's always valuable to know.
And I will add this as a life member of MASC, you never know if I'm going to show up or not.
That's true.
If you want to go to the delegate assembly.
Oh,
Yeah. All in favor?
Nice try. No, I don't. So I'll leave it at that.
All right, well, we'll say thank you to Don for not only tonight, but for all the great work that he's done to keep our meetings streamed and available to a wider audience than who comes to office. Happy again for notes. It's a pleasure to meet Samantha and welcome. Thank you everybody again for presenting tonight. No, I know you're coming to a close too. Yeah, great school year.
It was nice. It was.
Given all the ups and downs, looking forward to what next year brings and that can growth and continued progress. With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion made by Bill. Second by Beth. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.